And welcome back to some sort of the Cooler Jets podcast. We're Ben Blessington and Michael Nania. Apologies getting this podcast out a little late, recording this late Friday night, but a massive game this Sunday. 2 1-3 teams facing off. And Michael, 1-4 sounds a hell of a lot different than 2-3. And so I know it's week 5. I know it's early in the season, and we act like every game is the biggest game of the season, but this feels like a must-win. Is it possible to have a must-win game in week 5?
I mean, I think it's as close as you can get in week 5. I always hesitate to call a game a must-win this early because, look, the Jets lose. They go out and beat Philly the next week. Now you're 2-4. You beat the Giants 3-4. You're right back in it. So not a must-win, but being realistic, if you lose 4 in a row, fall to 1-4, you can't beat the Broncos and their 32nd ranked defense. It's hard to see it going in a positive direction. So it's as close as it can get.
Yeah, you mentioned the 32nd ranked defense. Miami hung 70 on him last week. Justin Fields didn't have a first half incompletion. I don't think Tua had a first half incompletion either. So this defense is really struggling. We were checking out their depth chart, watching a little Broncos film before this one, and man, that front seven is soft. DJ Jones we knew, but outside of that, we were looking at that front seven. I was like, I kind of recognize some of these names from the draft, but geez, and then you go and turn on the film, and it's like they're getting blown off the ball. This defense just looks terrible. And so it's a prime opportunity for Zach Wilson to build off of that performance that he had Sunday night and, just keep growing that confidence in himself and for this football team to have confidence in him. And if he looks good again and he proves that Sunday night wasn't a fluke, this season has life. I mean, this season really looks a lot different. A tough September for the Jets to go from Rodgers blowing Achilles and then dropping 3 straight. But if they get the win, and Zach Wilson looks good for the second week in a row, and you can really start to feel like, okay, he's starting to build on something here. Like he's really starting to look like an NFL quarterback. You feel good about the Jets' chances down the stretch here. And there's next 5 games. They got Denver, then they got Philly at home after this, which is a tough game. But, I think the Jets have shown that they can hang with anybody. And Philly's also been in some close games at the last few weeks that they pulled out. So I think it's a tough game. I think that's probably the toughest game on their schedule. I said that before the season, but definitely not impossible. But let's say that's a loss. So beat Denver, lose to the Eagles. You're 2-4 at the bye. Coming out of the bye, you got the Giants, who look awful. You have the Chargers on Monday Night Football, who look beatable, very beatable. And then you got the Raiders. 5 games right there. 4 of them, I think the Jets can win. They can win all 5 of them. But 4 of them, I look at that and I say, this Jets team is damn good enough to beat the Broncos, Giants, Raiders, and Chargers. And so these next 5 games, at the very least, I think the Jets have to win 3 of them. And it starts this Sunday against a worse Denver team, terrible defense, allow Zach Wilson to keep building that confidence. And finally just I'd love a nice, comfortable blowout. How about you, Michael? I would love to have a Jets game. No stress, just hang 28 on them in the first quarter and let's sit back and monitor our fantasy teams. How about you?
When was the last time we had a game like that? I'm definitely not last year. I mean, they had end of game blowouts against the Dolphins and Bears, but they were down
Raiders?
to Chicago early in that game. So yeah, that's even that one. Like, when did they separate in that game? I think it was still 1 score in the third quarter. Like, talking about a game where it feels like it's over at halftime, and that second half you just take care of business. I don't even know. Probably not since 2015, like Titans.
We got to be forgetting.
It's been a
something.
while.
There's got to be something there. Knowing this Jets team, though, it's going to be close. I just have a feeling it's going to be mind-numbingly close. This Broncos team, look, they're not good. This defense is bad, but Russell Wilson has shown improvement from last year. Like, I do think he's had a bit of a bounce-back year just watching him. They're always dangerous. They have some talents on the offensive side of the football. It's just that defense is so bad. And you feel like, okay, this Jets defense, just look what they did to the Chiefs. I know the Chiefs hung 17 on them early, but they've looked good against the Chiefs. They've looked good against the Bills. They can hold their own against this Broncos team. And then it's like, I think Zach Wilson, if they come out aggressive and they, build on what they did last week, this should be a game that the Jets win. But for some reason, I just have a feeling it's going to be close. I do ultimately think the Jets win this. We'll get into the predictions towards the end of the pod. I do want to talk a little bit about the All-22 from last week. And also, there's some other storylines from this game that aren't just Zach Wilson. Obviously, you have Bryce Hall, Saleh saying he's not in a pitch count anymore, although I feel like he said that last week. But the revenge game for Bryce Hall to go back to Denver, the place that he tore his ACL, and Denver's front seven looks terrible. So I expect another a big Bryce Hall game. You also have DJ Reed out with a concussion. Under the radar, kind of a big deal because the strength of this Broncos offense is definitely the receiver group. So you're going to get a healthy dose of Bryce Hall, I'd imagine. We'll see what tricks the Jets have up their sleeves. So we'll talk about all that stuff, and then we'll break down some of the predictions and whatnot. But, Michael, let's first hop into the L22 from the Chiefs game. What did you make of Zach Wilson's performance? Because rewatching it, watching JT O'Sullivan's breakdown of Zach and this Jets offense, where it goes super in-depth, I felt great about it. I really do. And I feel like that's the type of performance that you really can build confidence off of because, that Titans game, his rookie year, okay, he made some great plays out of structure, got some deep bombs. Great. I'm trying to think of some other game. I guess he had the Tampa game his rookie year as well. I guess he did some good NFL quarterbacking in there, some intermediate stuff, quick reads, stuff like that. But this Chiefs game, I think, was the first time that you really saw him look like an NFL quarterback, getting to the line, changing protections, calling audibles, his footwork, his ball placement, everything looked flawless up until the fumble. And even the fumble, to me, like we talked about in the last week's podcast, look, it sucks. It's unfortunate he didn't get a chance to close the game out. And it's like, feels very much like that Tampa game his rookie year where he has a great game and then just kind of a brain dead play at the end and cost him. But I feel okay about that fumble because it's like, look, he took his eye. He got excited about what he saw pre-snap. He took his eyes off the ball. He drops it. Didn't get another chance. It sucks, but I feel a lot better about that than him throwing a pick to the linebacker or a strip sack fumble where he holds onto the ball too much. It's a dumb play. He's had plenty of worse plays, but that play doesn't sink the game for me. I think that Chiefs game is about as good as it's gotten for Zach Wilson, and it's not even particularly close. So what did you make from the All-22 of the Chiefs game? Are you back in on Zach Wilson? A week after saying you're never buying in on the optimism ever again, you got to watch that All-22. Are you back in?
No, I'm not back in. But with that being said, I could still say it was a great game. I think it's just important to remember that, like you said, you just got to stack these games, especially, to follow up that Chiefs game with now you face most likely the worst defense in the league. You have to be able to chain these good performances because he's had good games before. Not this good. I do think this was his best game. But, he had the Tennessee game. Then he goes out against Atlanta and has one of his worst games. Last year, he had that Buffalo game, which was pretty solid. They won that game. He was really efficient, led the offense really well. Then he has the New England game the next week where he gets
2 weeks
next week after the bye week, and he gets benched. So he hasn't had that consistency in his career. But with that being said, still, I think this was his best game. And, to come 1 week after a New England performance that was, I think, is right up there with some of his worst games, not his worst, but close, is, just a testament to the inconsistency that he's had. But, rewatching the film of this game, I think it confirmed all the stuff that we thought when we were watching it, like just the quickness of his decision making, the confidence of the decisions he was making, and to see the different angles of it and appreciate the ball placement of some of his throws was really impressive to watch. It truly felt like we were watching BYU Zach Wilson for the first time in the league, aside from a play here or there throughout his first couple seasons. This was the first time you got a whole game where you were like, okay, that's the guy we watched after you missed out on Trevor Lawrence, and we fell out in love with this guy and said, you know what, we're still getting a damn good prospect with the second pick. This is that guy we watched who made us believe that. The guy who was, making throws off platform, flicking 50-yard throws right off his wrist so his guys can make plays. Like that throw to Alan Lazard. Like, that's a really good example of what BYU Zach was, because the deep bomb I'm talking about, like the jump ball he caught in the first half, because
it wasn't his best throw, but
in a vacuum, not the best throw. It really isn't. It wasn't perfectly accurate. Could have been picked. Could have been deflected. Lazard went and won the jump ball, but that's what he was doing at BYU. He trusted his guys to make plays because he had guys who had that advantage. So now you have a guy now in Lazard who has a size advantage. Use that arm strength of yours. Give him a chance to go make a play. If he gets picked on a 50-yard bomb, all right, that's not the worst pick in the world. Those are the types of plays, the type of risks you want to see him taking. And he hasn't taken them that often in his career, not nearly as often as he did in college. But, when he has the confidence to let it rip, good things can happen. And again, that wasn't the greatest throw itself. He had a lot of throws in this game that were a lot more precise than that one. But think that one stands out as just how his mentality was different in this game, to be confident, to let those physical tools shine in this performance. So really liked everything he showed in this game, and it's the perfect example of what his ceiling can look like.
Yeah, the best play, I mean, it's definitely that drive coming out of half, that every throw on that drive. But the best play to me is when he checks in Conklin, make it a 6-man protection because he sees 6 guys at the line of scrimmage and then throws that slot fade to Ruckert and just perfect ball placement. And that was an audible. He changed the protection. I mean, that was NFL quarterback, and that looked like Aaron Rodgers from everything pre-snap through the throw. And he had a number of those plays. I mean, the touchdown to Lazard too. I mean, I think he could have gone to, I think it was Conklin over the middle or something, but he knew that if he's going to get that to Lazard, he's got to fire it in there and he's got to put it on the right shoulder. And he did that. And I think that's the thing that was kind of holding me back from feeling any sort of optimism last year when you're trying to defend him. Cause you're like, all right, look, he's still young. This team is winning games now. And so now you kind of feel like he's holding him back, but you have to keep in mind, like, he didn't get his full rookie year. He missed second half of training camp in the first 3 weeks of the season, like, let him settle into the year, but then he's dirting swing passes. He's throwing, slants 5 yards behind his guy. He can't hit a go route. I mean, his accuracy's all over the place, his ball placement, he's bailing on the pocket. And he just looked like a high school quarterback. So forget all the mental stuff, forget all the confidence, the physical stuff, the arm talent that we were all talking about was non-existent last year. And then through the first 3 weeks, and especially that Patriots game, which I know we talked about, wasn't great quarterback play. But the thing that stood out to me was like, okay, his ball placement's actually been very good all season. I mean, the Chiefs game was the best example of it, but Bills game, I guess he had the touchdown to Garrett Wilson was a perfect ball placement. But for the most part, compared to last year, Cowboys game, Patriots game, especially this Chiefs game, you've seen good accuracy. You've seen more decisiveness going back to the preseason as well. That internal clock is clearly sped up to the point where he's going through his drop, his back foot hits. He's looking at 1, he's looking at 2, and then he's checking it down or scrambling. He's not bailing from the pocket as much. He did a little bit against the Patriots, but again, when he is bailing, he's either throwing the ball away or, he hasn't launched it into triple coverage a few times. And so now the challenge for Zach is, okay, you played with confidence, because against the Pats, I don't think he looked entirely different from a accuracy, ball placement, arm strength type of standpoint. He looked different because he was confident. He was firing it in there. He was trusting one-on-ones. He was trusting tight windows. He didn't want to make the mistake against the Patriots. And so he was holding it down and throwing it away and bailing on pockets and whatever. He didn't want to make the mistake. There was a shift in mentality and it worked out for him. And he didn't throw any interceptions, and the Jets very easily could have won that game. And so now you're into this Denver game, and the fear is, okay, either he reverts back to the Zach Wilson he was, which I don't think is going to happen. The fear is that, okay, you're going to get confident, Zach Wilson. What happens when he throws that interception? What happens when he throws 2 interceptions? How do the Jets handle it, and how does he handle it? That's the next thing you have to see, because it's all easy for us to say going into the New England game. I mean, you called it. I have to give you props. You were saying how they have to throw on first down, whatever. But I was like, hey, it's going to be a monsoon. He's turned the ball over a ton. This defense can win the game. Run the football. And that's clearly what the Jets and Hackett wanted to do. And he took care of the ball, and he tried to manage the game. It wasn't great, but he didn't turn the ball over. And now it's like we've cut him loose. Let him throw. Air it out. Play confidently. What do you do when he starts throwing interceptions? So how do you kind of manage that if you're Hackett, Michael, in terms of you want to cut him loose, you want to play aggressive, but you don't want him to throw the game away when you have this type of defense?
You got to live with it. You got to live with whatever comes with that mentality, because I think we've seen when they try to play keep away with him that, even if sometimes he does keep the interceptions down, because, I mean, for the most part, interceptions in his career haven't been a huge issue, really. I mean, even this season, the 3 interceptions he threw against Dallas were all in garbage time. And outside of that, he has 1. So he hasn't been that terrible in that category, but you look at the New England game and he's playing safe, playing keep away, and
he's had some meltdown games.
Okay, he has had a few, but like it hasn't been a consistent game to game. And like there have been plenty of games where he had 0 picks, like that New England game 2 weeks ago, where like, okay, you didn't turn the ball over, but you also didn't move it at all, especially last year's New England game, even though he should have had one that was really easily dropped. But he's had plenty of 0 interception games where the offense did absolutely nothing. So I don't think you want that either. I think you live with 1 pick, even 2 potentially, if he's confident in moving the ball the way he was against Kansas City. So I think you got to live with it if you're Hackett. You can't play safe. You can't say, we got this defense we got to fall back on, we got this run game, because none of that's going to matter if your offense is completely stagnant. So confident Zach that's what we've seen. He's at his best when he's confident. You look at the Pittsburgh fourth quarter last year, when there's nothing to lose, it's time to just sling it and go make throws. The Kansas City game last week, get down 17-0, go sling it. Those are the moments when he's at his best. And it means you have to accept greater risk of interceptions, but that's just part of it. I think he's that Brett Favre kind of quarterback. I think at his best, that's who he's going to be. Turnovers might be up a little bit, but if that comes at the cost of, if that's the price you have to pay to get the Zach Wilson you got last week, then you deal with that.
We're playing Jameis Winston ball, 30 touchdowns, 30 picks.
I don't know if he's Jameis Winston.
I don't think so either.
Level, because even we said, even right now, he's not quite Jameis Winston.
No, that's the thing is there's the misconception because he's had a few meltdowns. I mean, I think like half of his career interceptions have come against the Patriots. And the reason I asked that question is because I think the best game to illustrate what we're talking about is last year, his first game against the Pats. First half, up until his last throw of the first half, looked great. Confident, airing it out, had the deep ball to Garrett, had a nice touchdown strike to Conklin. I remember sitting in the stands in that game and feeling like, all right, Zach Wilson, this is the best game of his career. And then he threw a pick, just a bad just missed it over the middle to the running back and picked off by a linebacker. And then he melted down. He proceeded to have two other interceptions that were just unforced errors when he's rolling out. And then at the end of the game, he got going again. Like you said, there was no pressure again. They were just letting him loose. And so I am curious to see what happens when he throws that pick. How do the Jets kind of handle it in terms of their play calling, and how does he handle it? Because it's going to happen. It might happen on Sunday. But I agree with you. I think the Jets recognize that in order to win games, they just have to be aggressive, and they have to trust their defense that, okay, if he does throw, you're going to take him throwing 2 touchdowns and 2 interceptions every game, because those 2 touchdowns guaranteed 14 points, assuming Greg the Leg comes through. It's guaranteed 14 points. Those 2 interceptions, I think you look at this defense and say, it's possible that's 0 points. It's possible that's 3 points, 6 points, 10 points, but two interceptions putting this Jets defense back on the field, that's not a guaranteed 14 points with the unit that you have, a unit that can create their own turnovers, get big plays. I think you trust that this defense can force punts, hold them to 3, or create a turnover. So I agree. You have to live with some of the mistakes. You want Zach Wilson playing confidently. And if he does play confidently and works through some of those mistakes, i.e. rookie or Peyton Manning, I'm not saying he's on that trajectory at all, but Peyton made a lot of mistakes, but he was aggressive. It's kind of the same thing with Darnold when he was younger in his career, where he threw more interceptions than Zach, but he tried those tighter windows. And I feel like you started to see his confidence as an NFL quarterback grow. It's not like he's done anything with it. But Zach, it was the opposite, where it's like he looked so much not like an NFL quarterback, and partly because he was terrified to make a mistake. I mean, this is a guy who got booed at his home debut, deservedly so. I think he threw 3 interceptions in his first 10 passes. And from that moment on, you saw him timid and afraid to try windows and afraid to make that mistake. Got to turn the page. This is a new era for Zach Wilson, and it starts this Sunday. So I guess we'll hop into this preview. Actually, is there anything else in the L22? We always focus on the quarterback, but new O-line, Hackett offense, defense. Is there anything else that jumped out to you?
I mean, offensively, the new O-line, I think, is looking pretty solid. This game was maybe a little step back from the Patriots game, but, I mean, pass protection's been pretty good for the most part. Run blocking, they still were dealing with some loaded boxes in this game. But you mentioned this to me. It always feels like they're one block away. It'll be mostly well blocked. One guy blows one. But I think that's kind of exacerbated by the fact that one of the running backs they're using is completely unable to break a tackle. When Bryce Hall is out there, he can make the one guy miss. And, if the majority of the play is well blocked, he just needs to beat one guy. He can do it. But Dalvin Cook is just embarrassing right now. But new offensive line, I really like the way things are trending with that unit. And then defensively, I think the cornerback play has been great this season, just like it was last year. The linebackers, I think, have been very solid to start off. But the issue I have right now is with the pass rush. And the Jets did, to their credit, make some good pass rush changes in this game. They benched Al Woods. He was inactive. And we'll see going forward if they maintain that against different teams. But they did that. Bryce Hall finally played some early down snaps, so he played the most pass snaps, the highest percentage of pass game snaps in any game over the past 2 seasons. He played over half of them because they let him play some first and second down, and he delivered with his most pressures in a game in his career with 7. So he played more snaps, handled the high volume. So they did make some good changes, but at the same time, they've some guys who are underperforming right now, specifically Jermaine Johnson. He's playing a lot of pass rush snaps, and he's one of the worst edge rushers in the league this year in terms of pass rushing. Run defense, great, but in terms of pressures, just winning as a pass rusher, very, very rare that he wins. And he plays a lot of snaps, so it's really costing the pass rush. And that's an underrated issue with not just the defense, the whole team right now, because the pass rush is supposed to be the heart and soul of this team. So if the edge rusher who's leading your team in pass rush snaps is almost never winning, it's going to hurt a lot. Because last year in that role, they had Carl Lawson, who had a very solid season last year, and now he's replaced with Jermaine, who's playing at a much lower level than Lawson was last year. So that's the biggest downgrade for the pass rush. And speaking of Lawson, he's still playing in that small role, and he's had a really rough season. He also never wins. He doesn't look healthy. So there are some issues with the
Will
pass
McDonald
rush
time
that need to get cleaned up. And McDonald too, like he deserves more reps, but I'll also say, like, I've been looking at his snaps, trying to see like that one play I could clip and put out there and say, this is why he needs more snaps. But he's kind of off to a rough start.
I felt like he drew that. Did you see, the play I'm talking about where I felt like he drew the whole?
Yeah, there was that one play. He's had a couple like that, but he's kind of struggling a little bit to get his moves going. I know he had the spin going in the preseason, but like you can see the speed and explosion, but he's getting caught up a lot. Sometimes he'll speed rush and he'll just get sent past the quarterback and get buried.
I just feel like he needs reps.
But he needs those reps. You're right. Like, because right now, Lawson, that ship feels like it's kind of sailed at this point. And then Jermaine, and again, to their credit, they did take a snap count down in this game, but still playing a lot of reps, probably more than he deserves at this point. So with more reps, McDonald could put it all together. He's got a lot more to offer than I think JJ and Lawson are giving you.
How do you think they handle DJ Reed's injury this Sunday, being out? You think it's straight to Bryce Hall? Do you think they go more man coverage, leave Sauce on an island, play MC2 outside? JBC might be active. I mean, what do you
probably Bryce Hall time? I mean, seems like that he's been playing some snaps in relief, like when they have more DBs out there. They used him on
last week.
Tight ends last week.
Hey,
yeah, he's kind of like
do you remember we called that?
Player. Yeah,
that's a random one. That's a random one. We said. I mean, I guess we were talking about it more in terms of like, well, the top level tight ends like Travis Kelce, you can put Sauce on, but when they face those like mid level guys, we were talking about how we were worried who do they have that can match up with tight ends, and we were like, maybe they put Bryce Hall out there. It's our Joe Blewett episode, but you're right, they did do that. I think he got burned by Tony on one play. I'm trying to remember. I only really watched.
Yeah, there were a couple plays where I think he got beat, so it didn't go too great. But
I didn't focus on Bryce Hall.
I think it's Bryce Hall time. Yeah, I mean, maybe you get some packages where, like, say 12 personnel's on the field, 2 receivers. Maybe it's Carter and Sauce. Maybe some packages like that. Maybe some more 3 safeties, which they've done a decent bit this year. Instead of
Tony Adams
using the base defense with Quan leaving. Sherwood has played a lot less in that role than Quan was playing, and instead they've been doing more of that 3 safety. So maybe get even more of that in this game.
Yeah, they could. That's an interesting point.
They do use a decent amount of like 2 tight ends, 2 backs, get a fullback in there. The Broncos do a decent amount of it, so maybe we'll see some even more 3 safety.
Yeah, I think 3 safety. That's a great point you raised. I mean, I do think we're going to get a good bit of Bryce Hall, but if they do go 12, they can go with Carter and Sauce as their 2 corners, and then if they want to go nickel, okay, you could bring Bryce in, but you could also put Tony Adams in the slot, who's had plenty of work there in dime packages. I mean, maybe that's a little too galaxy brain. Maybe it's just easier to keep everybody where they're at and just slide Bryce Hall right in. But you've had Amos and Whitehead playing next to each other the last 2 weeks. It does feel like that's something you could do. They get Tony Adams back, which I think is big because there's been some miscommunication touchdowns the last 2 weeks, and I don't know if Amos has much to do with it or if that's just Whitehead, and maybe that would happen regardless. But the Jets have had far too many miscommunications and far too many missed tackles. For a defense that otherwise has looked great against 2 of the best offenses in the NFL, has forced turnovers and gotten sacks in those 2 games, Had two other games that were a little underwhelming, but at the end of the day, low points allowed against the Patriots and low second half points allowed against the Cowboys. So what do you kind of make of this defense 4 weeks in, some of their issues? I mean, obviously you talked about the pass rush, but in terms of miscommunications in the secondary, missed tackles, is that anything that's concerning, or is that just kind of September football stuff?
I think the blown coverages are concerning because I think that's something they did really well last year. Like, we didn't see a lot of blown coverages from them last season. And that was a huge part outside of some Joyner. But for the most part, I mean, even he didn't really have that many busts throughout the course of the season. That's why the Jets were so good in terms of, being near the top of the fewest big plays allowed through the air. They communicated pretty well. So this year it has been frustrating to see, back-to-back weeks now, you give up a deep bomb touchdown to a blocking tight end who both of them haven't scored at all otherwise this year. And it was the longest catch of both of their career for both of them. So you shouldn't be allowing deep touchdowns to guys like that. And that's a big part of why they're starting games slowly. You just take out those two deep touchdowns to guys who shouldn't be scoring them. And all of a sudden, these last two first halves, they look a lot different. So, that's concerning because it's been happening pretty consistently. So something they got to clean up for sure.
What are some of the other changes you'd like to see them make? I mean, obviously they benched Al Woods. I do think he'll be back depending on the matchup because they could use him against the run. They upped Bryce Huff. They did a lot of the things on offense that we were talking about in terms of they got Gibson some snaps. They played Ruckert. What are some of the other things, or could they go further with those things that you'd like to see them do in week 5?
I mean, this week in particular, it's going to be interesting because, like, with all the negative talk about the Broncos, their offense has improved over last year. Russell Wilson is playing much better with Sean Payton there now. And, similar type of quarterback, obviously not to the level they're playing at right now, not to the same as the Kansas City Chiefs, but, another mobile quarterback, and the Jets have struggled with quarterback scrambles this year. That's another thing they can improve on. So I'm curious to see, like, how do they balance that, balance the scales with aggression with the pass rush, but also trying to contain the quarterback, because they've really struggled with not just the scrambles, but also just improvised plays. And, being able to let those type of quarterbacks make plays on them, whether it was Josh, and obviously they did a great job in Allen overall, but, there were some plays where he got loose. And then you look at last week against Kansas City, that's definitely an issue as well. So, yeah, and even Mac Jones was getting some scrambles on them. So that's the biggest thing I'm going to be looking at this week. How do they balance that between, like, we want to get after the quarterback and we want to be aggressive, but we also got to keep the quarterback in the pocket and not allow these scrambles and improvised plays. So in terms of doing that, it's just a mentality thing. Like, I think they are trending in the right direction with some of the personnel changes, with playing Huff more, less Al Woods. Jermaine snaps were down last week, but I'd keep pushing Will McDonald up. But other than that, I think it's just better communication on the back end, getting those coverage busts out of there, more consistent tackling across the board, and just flat out winning more reps in the pass rush. And then, like I said, how do you balance that with discipline to contain the quarterback?
Yeah, and then I think offensively, what do you think they should do with Mecole Hardman? I keep calling him Mecole. Because it seems like he's kind of taken a backseat to Gibson, because I think they feel like if they're going to give one of the speedy guys design touches, they feel like Gibson might have a little bit more juice and can make guys miss more than Mecole. But I think Mecole in the offseason was their guy for that. Obviously, Rodgers getting injured changed everything. But we've seen Mecole used outside and less so in the slot. What do you kind of make of that? And do you think, maybe he's a guy that if Garrett were to go down, he'll have a big impact. If Lazard were to go down, he'd have a bigger impact. But is there room for him the way that they're calling this offense with Cobb and Gibson stealing some reps?
I mean, I still think there's room for Hardman to get more snaps, because they did take Cobb down a lot in this game. He was at 39% against the Chiefs. That allowed Gibson to get 19%, which was obviously his highest of the season. But they did a lot of He deserves more as well. I mean, really anything Cobb's getting right now kind of feels like too much. I mean, he had one good catch in this game.
Yeah, he made the play for the first down. He had last week
season. So
drew the PI.
There's a role for Cobb in the offense, but
well, they like Cobb for those clear out routes because you notice it really is 1-2 check down or scramble, and it's 1 Garrett Wilson, 2 Lazard for the most part. And a lot of times Cobb or the tight ends, less so last week, are clearing defenders out of areas. I mean, he's just running a go ball to get somebody out of the seam, or you know what I mean, like just to take the corner with him. He's there to block. Like they're not really throwing to Cobb. He's just kind of doing all the dirty work.
Right, which is why I think Hardman in the same role is more valuable. And you even saw it on some of the plays he had against KC, because there were a couple of plays where he did a vertical clear out, and just because of the threat of his speed, the Chiefs gave him a different look, which, the Chiefs know him well, gave him a different look, and the Jets were able to complete a pass underneath him. And if Cobb were in the same position, you don't know for sure if the same thing would happen, because he would probably be played differently by the defense than when you see McCole Hardman out there. So there is a room for him to get more snaps, but at the same time, I think you like Gibson, the way that he's played, you want to get him the football. And, there are a lot of guys here, so definitely there's room for more snaps, but at the same time, I don't think we're going to see him playing a huge role anytime soon.
All right, well, Broncos defense, pretty bad. The one thing that stands out to me about KC in this game is they played a lot of man coverage. And I've said this on the podcast before, but I always feel like man coverage puts a lot more pressure on your receivers to get open, and then your quarterback to just make those throws in terms of ball placement, accuracy, throw power. And we saw that. The Jets have a guy who can, like in Garrett Wilson, who can beat man pretty much in every situation, and Zach Wilson was delivering the throws. Now you face a team that plays a lot more zone coverage, and I think the pressure goes a lot on your quarterback to be able to read the defense, recognize what he's seeing, and know where to go with the football. And then on your receivers to, find the soft spots in the zone, sit down in routes, etc. And the Chiefs, it's not like they played it entirely man. And we've seen Zach Wilson have some good moments against zone as well. But I feel like a lot of his best throws came in man coverage. He trusted his receivers, and he made a great throw. And against Denver, what I suspect is you're going to see is I think they're going to throw – you're telling me they play a lot of cover 6. I think you're going to see a lot of exotic coverages, some zone blitzes. I think you're going to just see a lot of zone in this matchup. We'll see. I mean, every team plays man. They do have Patrick Surtain, who they might trust to man up on Garrett. But what do you kind of make? What do you think the Broncos, after watching what Zach Wilson did on Sunday Night Football, that they're going to say, okay, maybe he can beat cover 1. Maybe he's finally proven he can beat when a team stacks the box and doesn't allow you to run. They play man coverage and say, go beat us, quarterback. Zach has proved he can do that. Maybe we'll still get a little bit of it because he's only done it 1 week. But I suspect they're going to come back with something else. So what do you think Denver does to try to attack Zach Wilson and some of the weaknesses that he might still have?
I mean, I feel like they're just going to stay in line with what teams have generally done against him, because I know he had a great game last week where he punished teams for playing aggressive a little bit, but it was just one game. So I don't think it was enough for me as an opposing defense to say, you know what, we're going to back off now. We respect this guy. I think I would rather say, all right, prove you can do it again, especially on the road in our house where, you came in here last year and we pretty much shut you down. So I think we're going to see more of the same. And that's why it's going to be another great opportunity for Zach and Hackett to do what they did so well last week, which is, first starting with Hackett, let him throw him first down, let him have those opportunities. And then Zach just ripping it confidently, taking some of those shots, picking his matchups that he likes and throwing aggressive passes, giving his guys chances to make plays with great ball placement. So I do expect the Broncos to continue doing what pretty much every team has done against Zach Wilson since last year. And that's, be aggressive, loading the box, and maybe play a little more man coverage than you usually do. So
really,
that's what I would expect to see. Yeah,
I don't think so. I disagree with you on that. I just think that I think Zach at least to me proved that if they play aggressively, they throw on first down, he can beat that. I don't think he
proved anything. That's the thing. It was a great game.
I guess it's 1 week. You're right. I guess it's 1 week. To me, though, he hasn't proven at all that he can. I think. That's fair, but I guess to me, he hasn't proven at all that he can beat those complicated zone looks. I mean, even look at that New England game the week before. I mean, I feel like he was quick to get to the check. I mean, we've gone back and forth on that film, but if Denver starts throwing some crazy looks, feels like he could be quick to get to the check down. Feels like you can force him out of the pocket, make a mistake. I don't know. I think I'm confident enough in his ball placement right now. I mean, we'll see. You're right. He hasn't proven anything. But I'm confident enough in his ball placement and in Garrett Wilson that the Jets can run a competent offense if they face that style of defense. But I guess you're right. Bryce Hall still is the guy to defend in this offense. He's yet to have that big breakout game. Do you think that this is the game that they get Bryce Hall rolling, cut down Dalvin Cook's touches to 1 or preferably nothing, run the ball with Bryce? Maybe they do face some lighter boxes at times if Zach Wilson does make him pay? Or do you anticipate, again, this is another slower Bryce Hall day?
No, I do believe solid that they're going to take Hall off the pitch count and give him the opportunities in this game because, it does make sense that they wanted to take it slow. Maybe 4 games was about what they projected before the season. Like, okay, once it's week 5, then he'll be ready to go at full speed. So it seems like this could be about where they had a set, deadline for him to get back to full strength. And he's played so well. He's proven he deserves it. And Cook has played so poorly to the point where you're like, okay, he's, let's just give our best guy the football at this point. So I think they're going to do it. And last year when Hall was the number 1 guy, when he claimed that, he's playing like high 60s in terms of the snap percentage his last few games there. I think he'll be right about there. And I do expect him to get carries. I do expect the Jets to try and run the ball, but in a similar way to last week where it's pass first, we're going to come out and we're going to throw the ball a lot. And I think they'll have success with that because this is a really bad Broncos defense. Terrible pass rush, secondary outside of Pat Surtain, who hasn't had a great start to the season himself, is also really bad, and especially on first down, especially in the first half. Both of those things they've been terrible at, starting games and defending on first down. So great opportunity for the Jets to continue doing what they did last week, which is throw on first down, especially with play action, and establish that respect early in the game and force the defense to back off. Then you can run the football like they did when Bryce Hall got that 43-yard run last week, which was on first down. I don't think that's happening if you try that same exact play in the first quarter. But you wait, you demand some respect, and if you look at that Bryce Hall play again, the Jets had a lot of blockers in there. They had 2 tight ends. The receivers were tight, but the Chiefs only had 7 defenders against that look inside the box because at the last second, the safety dropped out. The cornerbacks were pretty soft. The safeties were pretty soft. So the Jets had the numbers advantage, and they got that big run. And that's a result of what Zach did early in the game. And they have a great chance to do that again this week. So I expect Bryce Hall to get plenty of touches in this game, but I think it'll come later as the game goes on, especially if the Jets keep it close, which I think they will. They should have that opportunity to stay balanced for 4 quarters. And I think this is an especially good matchup for Bryce because the biggest weakness with the Broncos' run defense has been their outside run defense. Runs to the inside, they're okay. They have DJ Jones in there. He's a great nose tackle who we wanted last offseason. But outside, they've been terrible. They're giving up over 8 yards per carry on runs outside the tackles, worst in the league. And that is because their linebackers, corners, and safeties, worst missed tackle rate in the league between those 3 positions, over 23%. So almost a quarter of the time they have a chance to miss a tackle, they're missing it on the second level. And Bryce has done a great job of making those guys miss this year. On all the big runs he's had, he's made a guy miss at the second level, and it's allowed him to break free. So now you put him against this defense with the number of tackles they miss and how poorly they defend the edge. It's a recipe for him to hit some home runs. So I think they're going to try to get him that ball on the edge and hit some home runs throughout this game. But like I said, especially later on, I think they're going to throw it early and often on first down, try to build that respect for the defense, back them off, and then wear them down later.
Any key matchups you're keeping an eye on? I mean, you mentioned that front 7. We talked about how bad this pass rush is. So another good day for the offensive line. Zach should have some time to throw. Is there anybody? I mean, obviously that Sauce or that Garrett Surtain matchup is pretty intriguing on paper. But is there anything else that you're keeping an eye on?
Well, you mentioned the offensive line. I think that's one I'm going to be looking at really closely because this is a chance to dominate. This is not a good Broncos front 7 to say the least. So, the offensive line was up to 2 really tough challenges the last 2 weeks in their first 2 games as a new unit. I mean, New England speaks for itself with Judon, with the number of weapons they have and how unique they play with the complex packages they throw at you, the games, the stunts, complex defense to play in your first game as a unit, and they were up to it. Kansas City's defense has been elite this year. They have Chris Jones, who's one of the best out there. And they played well in both those games. But now you go against the Broncos, a team that has, you look at their pass rush numbers. They've only got 8 sacks this year, 2 per game, which is towards the bottom of the league. Pressures are down, hits, all that stuff. So you have a chance to really assert your dominance here as this new look Jets offensive line and show that this is a unit for the rest of the season. And this isn't just an improvement over what we had to start the year. This isn't just an okay unit. This is a chance to show that they can assert their dominance over the lesser defensive lines in the league and potentially be a really solid offensive line, that above average unit that we thought they could be coming into the year.
Yeah, I think offensively, the other thing that I would keep an eye out for is the tight ends. Obviously, Cole Kmet had a good game against this defense last week, and I just don't think they have anybody who can match up with obviously Conklin, Rucker getting more snaps. I mean, all 3 tight ends last week had good games, and you talked about it at the beginning of this podcast. We talked about it last week as well. Zach Wilson at BYU, he had those big receivers that he felt confident he could throw it up to and they could come down with it. He's obviously got Allen Lazard, who he seems to be developing some good chemistry with, and those 3 tight ends. And so I think Lazard and the 3 tight ends are the kind of the weapons that I'm keeping an eye on. Obviously, it's the Garrett Wilson show, but they do have Surtain. He's had a bit of a down year, but he's still good. I would key in on those tight ends, so I feel like that's a good matchup for the Jets. Defensively, though, this is, like you said, a better Broncos offense than they were last year. Wilson's had a bit of a bounce-back year, but still a terrific Jets defense, even without DJ Reed. So when you look at this Broncos offense, I mean, what stands out to you? Obviously, some good receivers. Super Bowl winning quarterback. Javonte Williams should be back in this game. So what do you kind of feel is the key to beating the Broncos in this one? Should they man up more? I know we talked about it a little bit without DJ, but do you go more man coverage? Just leave Sauce on an island? Do you stick with this quarters coverage that the Jets usually run? What do you kind of anticipate on that side of the ball?
I think we'll see more of the same from the Jets because, especially with DJ Reed being out of there, I think it makes it harder to, maybe be experimental with that type of thing if you wanted to. And for the most part, I think the Jets' base usage of their cornerbacks has worked pretty well, just keeping them on their side. I know people want to see Sauce travel and all that, but part of what the Jets' corners have done so well, especially with Carter II being in that slot position, is just communicating, passing things off. And I know they've had some coverage busts this year, but that's mostly been like safeties and linebackers. But the corners, they're doing their jobs really well this year. I think they've been just as good as they were last year. Shaky Bills game maybe, but for the most part, it's been really good between the corners. So I think they're going to stick with what they do, and hopefully Bryce Hall can step up and have a good game. I think.
Yeah. How do you feel about Hall?
Go, yeah, I mean, as far as backups go, like I don't think you can do much better than him. Like, who has a better backup cornerback than that? Who in his rookie year played and was one of the league leaders in pass deflections, and I think all of us thought he's like an average starting cornerback as a not rookie, second year player, but first year as a starter. Yeah, he's got the length, he's got the size, his coverage is usually tight. He's not good at playing the ball. We know that, but he's usually there. And for a backup corner, that's the most you can hope for. We've watched so many bad backup corners with the Jets. Rashard Robinson comes to mind.
Jeez.
I mean, Pierre Desir wasn't a backup. He was actually starting for the
Jets.
Jets.
Let's see. How many guys, random Jets corners can you name?
Just get roasted,
Let's hear it.
Darren Walls.
Phillip Adams.
There's one.
The only guy who wore Revis's number in between his stints.
A lot of randos in there.
Oh, come on. We got more on us. Come on.
Buster Screen. Marcus
Brian
Williams.
Poole.
Brian Poole.
Those are kind of obvious guys.
We used to think was really good.
Let's dig deeper. Like 2020.
Who's that guy in 2020? It was like, I guessed him. You showed me a video a couple weeks ago.
Oh, they traded for him. And he started week 2 against the Browns.
Yeah, why am I forgetting this guy?
What's that guy's name?
From the Colts?
Frick, what is that guy's name? I gotta look it up. I'm gonna cheat.
All right,
we just talked about him. I'll find it.
We just talked about this. Oh, I got one. Isaiah Dunn from 2021. Remember he had that one great play against the Titans?
Vaguely.
All right, who's that guy from 2020? Did you look
2019 roster. Oh, I got it.
All right.
Nate Hairston.
Nate Harrison.
Daryl Robertson here as well. Jeez.
Daryl Roberts.
All right.
So a lot of legends.
Kyron Brown, Maurice
lines.
Kennedy.
I think Bryce Hall. Yeah, I think Bryce Hall is better than all those guys, is the point we were making. So we'll see if he's up to it. Maybe not the best matchup for him because I think the Broncos are a vertical team. They got a lot of speed, good route running.
I feel like he matches up all right with Sutton.
Wilson likes to throw vertical.
I feel like he matches up
Sutton
all right
would be a good matchup for him if you get him on
bigger
there.
Receivers, but Mims and Judy are a little more shifty, and we've seen
right. So those speedsters could be like DJ Reed against those types. And actually, Reed was up for the task against Sutton last year, to his credit, which you would think is a mismatch because of the size. But like Reed against these type of guys, you're like, okay, he's perfect. He's got the speed and fluidity to stick with them. Hall maybe not, but we'll see. I think I'm, as far as backups go, pretty confident, but we'll see what happens. You know they're going to go after his side.
I don't know how much you keyed in on Tony Adams for the first. Did he play? He played against Dallas too, right? He got injured in that game.
Yeah.
It's a small sample size, but we got a game and a half of Tony Adams and then 2 games of Amos. What do you kind of make of the return of Adams and the impact it could have on the defense? Or is it too early to really tell if it's an upgrade or not?
I feel like it is too early to tell because I don't think he got off to the strongest start. It's not to say he was terrible, but not quite as good as he looked at the end of last year when he was playing safety. There were some missed tackles in there, a couple of plays in coverage where he got beat. So it wasn't amazing, but it wasn't terrible. And remember, this is a guy who was undrafted last year, second-year player, basically his 3rd and 4th starts at safety in his career. So, he's as raw as it gets. And the fact that he's even in this position tells you that he's shown a lot in practice, like a lot, to be able to earn this role with, coming from the position that he's coming from as a UDFA who barely played as a rookie. You got to be really impressive to do that. So I think you trust that he's going to develop it with time. I don't think Adrian Amos has been great. He's been involved in quite a few coverage busts. Had some missed tackles in there. I haven't been super impressed with him. He's looked like the backup that the Jets signed him as. But, with that being said, he's had some good hits in there as well. And I think it's similar to Bryce Hall. I think as far as backups go, you're okay with him in that role. But I think Adams is more likely to be an upgrade than a downgrade coming back.
All right, last thing. Anybody on this D-line, O-line matchup, is there one that you're circling? There's usually one that you kind of see on this opposing offensive line where you're like, this guy kind of sucks. Who can we exploit? Obviously, Jets edge rushers haven't been that good, but we should get a little bit more Bryce Huff. Maybe we'll get a little bit more Will McDonald. We'll see if Al Woods plays or not. But what is the matchup on this Jets D-line versus Broncos O-line you're paying attention?
I think I'm looking at Quinnen Williams against, and this is going to be a pretty unique one, but I'm going to say the center, Lloyd Cushenberry. He's a guy who pretty much every year since he's come into the league shows up at the top of some of those lists in terms of most pressures allowed and things like that. And he's actually been better this year. So that makes it even more interesting matchup because it's either going to be him being exploited a lot like he was the first 2 seasons of his career and Quinnen can dominate that, or if he keeps playing as well as he has this year, because he's actually only been hit with 2 pressures allowed this season. Then, if you're shutting down Quinnen Williams, that can change a lot. And, Quinnen does go against the center a lot. That's why I'm picking this one out. I mean, he had a sack against Mitch Morse in that Bills game last year that the Jets won. It was a pretty big play. So it does happen, with stunts, things like that. He'll match up with the center. But Mike McGlinchey is another guy to look at coming over from the Niners, a guy who we talked about potentially signing with the Jets. But him at right tackle, he's given up 13 pressures already.
Ooh,
that
Bryce
is near
Huff
the
time.
top for tackles.
Bryce Huff
6
time.
penalties. That's Bryce Huff time right there because and they moved Huff around last week too, which is another thing I credit the Jets for. They put him on both sides of the line, didn't just put him on one side. They moved him around to get some matchups with Donovan Smith, who was perceived as the weaker tackle going into that game. So if you can get Huff against McGlinchey, there's some damage to be done there. He's near the top in terms of penalties. He's third most penalties among tackles this season, and he's tied for the 10th most pressures allowed, 7th most among right tackles. So
nice.
He's definitely a guy you can beat and do some damage against.
All right, I want to see a little bit more Bryce Huff with the first team D-line. Let's get a little bit more Will McDonald in there as well. But that seems like an intriguing matchup. Let's get into some random predictions. Actually, we have a few things before that, but I have a good one just based off what you said. But before we get to that, Michael, we've done this every week. Who's the Jets' X factor for week 5? Just to be corny. And just to remind you, last week you said Bryce Huff, and I said Sauce Gardner. So we were both on the money there for last week. Who's it for week 5? Maybe we should keep these for each week. I keep deleting them, but whatever. So I feel like we've been pretty money on choosing these every week.
The previous versions.
That's true. Every week we've chosen somebody who's actually had a big impact. I mean, look, there's only so many guys who can have an impact, so maybe it's a fallacy. But let's hear it. Who's the X factor for this week from you?
I'm going to say Zach Wilson.
Oh, come on. You can't go quarterback. Yeah, there you go.
No quarterbacks. You have one? I want to try it. I want to think of a good one. Anyone who comes to mind quickly?
I was going to say Bryce Huff, honestly, but you already used him. I don't want to use him again. Bryce Hall, obvious, filling in for DJ Reed. Tony Adams coming back from injury.
All right, I got a good one.
You want to hear a weird one? All right, you go ahead. I have a weird one.
I'm going to say Garrett Wilson. This is his week to truly dominate and take over a game. Not that he hasn't done his part to do that this season, because we see on film the plays are there, and he hasn't been hit. But I look at the Bears and I see the way they struggled to start the season. And I see DJ Moore breaking out, and you said he's kind of like the Garrett Wilson of fantasy football, and I see him finally getting his production and his stats at last, because we know he's a great player, getting held back by the quarterback, by the offense. But now they're starting to figure out how to get him the ball, make big plays. So against this 32nd ranked Denver defense, I want to see Garrett Wilson take over a game.
You're going Wilson. I'm going to go Tyler Conklin. I think this is a big game for the tight end.
Nice.
I think Denver's really going to key in
we
on
watched
Garrett.
The Bears highlights against the Broncos. We saw a bunch of tight end catches in the red zone.
I watched
we knew the tight ends would be big.
But I do think I was tempted to put Ruckert, but I think Conklin, he's still the number 1 tight end. I think he has a big game. I think we disagree a little bit on how the Broncos will play this game. I do think it's possible they come out heavy cover 1, heavy man, load the box, stop Brees. But I think last week to me really is going to scare defensive coordinators off from doing it early so far. I mean, I know he hasn't proven anything, but I think you're more confident in a 32nd ranked defense out scheming Zach Wilson and Nathaniel Hackett than just going man to man, our guys versus your guys. Because I think if you do that, Garrett Wilson's going to get open. Zach Wilson's going to find him. He's playing with confidence. I trust it. I think they're going to try to scheme him and go with those zone matchups. And if they do that, it's going to be, I think, Tyler Conklin. I was tempted to put Lazard, but I think Conklin is kind of the guy who finds the soft spot in the zone, who can be that check down, great blocker, who can do some of that clear out stuff, do the dirty work. So I think he's just a big player in terms of getting this offense going if they do face something different. And I think he's developing chemistry with Zach. Although Lazard, tempted to put Lazard. I think he's slowly becoming, I mean, nobody's going to pass Garrett in terms of favorite receiver, but I think he's developing that chemistry that he kind of had with Corey Davis last year in terms of like a guy that he really trusts. And Lazard brings that jump ball ability as well. Other thing before the predictions, where are the Jets better? And Michael, this won't be a clean sweep because of quarterback, but I predict some domination here on the Jets side of the ball because you compare these two rosters, and I don't think it's particularly close. But we'll start off with quarterback, and I will give it to the Broncos.
Yeah.
I think their Wilson is better. More expensive, though. And, he's better. Running back, Javonte Williams, healthy. Should be for this game. I still think I would rather take Bryce Hall. Although Dalvin Cook is weighing down this running back room. I think I'd rather have – who do they have? They have
he is, but I guess if we look at this game and go with what the Jets are saying, that we're going to get more Bryce, that definitely makes the room better. And Javonte Williams hasn't done much this year, so I would go Jets.
All right, let's go Jets for running back. For receiver, I don't think there's a receiver in this game as talented as Garrett Wilson. But the Broncos do have a nice trio here with Judy, Sutton, and Mims. Is Marvin Mims Denzel Mims' cousin, or is he his brother, or is there no relation?
I think he's his son. It's Mims Jr.
Okay, get out of here. Let's see. Marvin Mims. Is this the Denzel Mims revenge game? They brothers?
Yes,
American
revenge for the Mims family.
Hey, he's brother. He's Denzel Mims' brother. Cool.
Yeah, well, there we go.
All right, well, this is Denzel Mims' revenge game. Jets, Garrett, Lazard.
I mean, Judy, at this point, it's fair to say Judy's been kind of disappointing in the league.
He was
he's a good player.
Highly thought of guy.
I think the name is bigger than the production at this point. I mean, he has 7 first downs.
It really comes down to which receiver room would you rather have. If you're the Jets, you could trade this entire Jets receiver room for this entire Broncos receiver room. You don't do it. And it's only because of Garrett Wilson. And if you're the Broncos,
just having Garrett Wilson puts them ahead.
Right, and I think the Broncos would move there.
Chemistry with Zach Wilson, like you said.
One game, but yes. Tight end.
Yeah, we've seen the Bills game. They do a couple connections. That's it.
Not really. Tight end. I think this one's not close. They got Troutman. I don't know anybody else.
Yeah.
I guess Dolchich got hurt, but this is versus Conklin, Ruckert, and Uzomah. This is a clear Jets tight end win. Offensive tackle. With Becton and AVT, the Jets might be winning some of these tackle battles. Not going to lie. Computer is frozen, so I'm going to need you to take over.
McGlinchey and the other tackle spot, Garrett Bowles, was really good. McGlinchey hasn't played great this year, but AVT is really boosting that tackle spot for the Jets. Maybe a push here.
All right. Interior offensive line. Who are you going with? My computer is frozen, Michael, so I can't.
We got Ben Powers, left guard, Lloyd Cushenberry, center, Quinn Miners at right guard. I mean, I like the way the Jets interior has played the last couple games. Joe Tippmann has been awesome. I think Lakin's been more competent since things have switched up. McGovern, I would like to see more from, but hasn't been terrible. He's been below average. It's so hard to say without like I don't know how the Broncos interior line plays. I can look at stats, but it's like,
all right, that's
without
fair.
watching them, you don't really know.
That's fair. Okay. By the way, did you say push for tackle?
Yeah, I mean,
you said push for tackle. Sorry, my computer froze but you said push for tackle over. You're taking Bowles and McGlinchey over AVT and Becton.
Garrett Bowles is really good. I mean, he's shown that he's one of the top left tackles. And McGlinchey got a big contract. He hasn't started the season well, but
all right, fine. Well, you can go push there, but I would go Jets there. I think interior, it's close. Jets starting a rookie and Tippmann, but like you said, I don't know enough to. Let's go.
It will be Tippmann's first road game, so we'll see how that goes.
Really will affect him. All right. Well, Jets should clear every unit on defense. I don't think it's even worth going through it, but defensive line, Jets. Edge, Jets, linebacker, Jets, corner, Jets. Although it's still Jets. And safety, they have Simmons. Safety's the only one.
Yeah, safety is the only position I might think about because they have Simmons. But I don't know. The whole secondary's been so atrocious that it's hard to even say they deserve credit for that. Maybe push there. Because I honestly think the Jet safeties have struggled recently. Like Whitehead's been involved in both of those blown coverages against the tight ends. He's missed a lot of tackles. He's kind of just been the same guy as last year.
Also the lead leaguer in interceptions.
That's true.
Ball hawk.
I would say push here.
All right, fine, push. Final random predictions. Let's hear it, Michael. I can't open the doc, so I'm gonna need you to read out what we did last week. From what I remember, you had big Travis Kelce play on the first drive.
I was right. I was right about that.
You were right. No, but then you said, and they would show Taylor Swift in the booth, which they did. But then while they were showing Taylor, this is all off memory, by the way. I can't see this dog.
Yes. Yeah.
It was Bryce Huff forces a fumble and like Jermaine Johnson recovered or something. That was your prediction, right?
That's what it was. Like,
wow.
While showing Taylor Swift, they would miss the start of the play and they would cut back to it. and Bryce Huff would have a strip sack recovered
Well,
by
you got half
Jermaine
of that
Johnson
right.
for a touchdown.
You got half that right. What was your other
I
one?
also said full Zach Wilson game, which
All right,
felt
nice.
somewhat bold at the time.
Hey, I thought Zach was going to have his best game as a pro. I also said 2 touchdowns for Zach. I don't know if we put that in this pod.
Some successful trick play.
Oh, they were going to have a
DJ
successful
Reed
trick play?
interception.
Well, they did go for it with the flea flicker.
Almost.
It was not successful,
Really
so I was wrong on that. And then DJ Reed interception, wrong on that. Okay, but on Twitter, though, I said 2 touchdowns for Zach Wilson, so come on.
I'm going to say 2 touchdowns for Bryce Hall.
2 Bryce Hall touchdowns. All right, let's hear some. Okay, I like that. Let's see our defense.
Defensively, I think Sauce Gardner gets his first interception.
I was going to say Zach Wilson 300-yard game, but I kind of feel like this is going to be a big Bryce game as well. I like your 2 touchdown prediction for Bryce. I'll go 2 Allen Lazard touchdowns, though. You like that?
All right.
Bold prediction
I
enough?
like
All right. 2 Allen Lazard touchdowns. Playing him in fantasy, but I got DJ Moore, so I'm fine. And then defensively, I'm going to say the Jets. What's their highest sack total in a single game so far this year?
I'm not sure about that.
Well, I'm saying they're going to break.
Oh, Allen, they had 5, right? They have 5
All
now?
right, I say they have 6 sacks on Sunday. Okay. You can write that down. 6 sacks against the Broncos on Sunday. That's my random prediction. Michael will do the plugs, and then we'll get out of here. Oh, score prediction. Sorry. Score prediction. Michael, are the Jets winning this game? And if so, by how much?
Jets are going to win this game, and it's going to be by a score of 31-27.
Okay, 31-27. I'll go 30-13.
Okay. Blowout.
That completely contradicts what I said at the beginning of the pod about it being close, but I'll go 30-13. I like that. All right, none of these predictions matter. Follow us to CYJ Pod on Twitter. Michael _ or is it X? CYJ Pod on X.
Oh, I'm yawning.
Michael _ Michael Nania. Wait, Michael at Michael _ Nania. Myself, Ben W. Blessington. Go to jetsxfactor.com. We're almost done, Michael. Check out the other Jets X Factor pods. Subscribe to the Jets X Factor YouTube. Rate, review, subscribe on iTunes if you can. I think that's it. Michael, last thoughts. Good uni matchup.
Yeah, all white against all orange. I kind of preferred white on black just because they were so successful in it last year. But
they did lose
going
2
back
good players.
to Denver. Bryce and AVT got hurt in that uniform. Didn't want the bad juju. So maybe another game next week.
Have we seen every single Unicon? Almost. We saw white on green.
We never saw black on green or black on white.
No. Sorry, against Denver. Because they were all black in 2020 against them. Then in 2021, they were white on green. Last year, they were white on black. This year, they're wearing white on white. We're just missing a little green jersey game, and we have a bingo.
Can't say that thought has crossed my mind. I'm a pretty big uniform psycho.
All right, we're done. You're tired. Thank you everybody for listening. Have a great week. And we'll be back on Sunday night, Monday morning, probably more accurately. But we'll record Sunday night and then upload it. It'll come out like midnight. But big game this Sunday. Hope the Jets pull through. 2-3 sounds a lot better than 1-4. Hopefully next time we talk, we're talking about a great Zach Wilson performance and a victory. So everybody have a great Saturday. Enjoy your weekend. Go Jets.